bow, bow, a bow, a bow, 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 a bow, a bow, 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 a bow, a bow, bow.
That's Times Square, New York, one of the world's most famous brands, where lots of other brands get together and show off in bright, flashing colors.
We're governed by these subconscious memories that we have of brands.
American brands dominate the world, but it's not just products. Nations have identities too.
Branding is distilling the essence of a place into an easily communicable symbol.
Yet despite a decade of war and an economic crash, nothing rivals brand America.
We are the manufacturer of dreams.
It was designed to be loved and admired.
Loved and admired by design or default, but does the rest of the world buy it?
Whose windows do you break if America does something bad to you? Do you try to get past the guards at the embassy, or do you go to McDonald's?
Will brand America endure the decline of American power, and can anyone challenge its rule?
There are governments that spend a lot of time and effort trying to make their population anti-American.
So, hail, hail, everything's for sale. It's the soft machine. It's got your vice. Ticket to paradise.
America is, almost every year since I've started doing the Nation Brands Index, by a significant margin, the most admired country on earth.
You can buy your dreams by brand. Ship FedEx to India.
We live in a world of dreams, and there is no nation better at the dream world.
So how do we unravel this world of dreams? To get to the big mystery, we have to start with the smaller ones. We need to know what brands actually are and how they work.
The French were the first to use branding in a real way. Their minister, Colbert, back in the era of King Louis XIV, he invented France as the first international luxury brand.
The intertwining of place and product began as the preserve of French aristocracy.
They built Versailles, which was basically a showcase. It was like a living reality show of product placements for French luxury brands. And those were the first people who thought about branding not just as, I'm going to be responsible for this horseshoe, but branding as a way of communicating values globally.
2 centuries on, the world and its values had become a very different place.
What changed fundamentally in the 20th century was a system in which, by the time you arrive at the 1950s and 60s, you were manufacturing needs to sell all the goods being produced.
This is the kitchen of tomorrow, a press-button dream coming true for Mrs. Housewife.
Marketing works not by selling you things that you need, but by associating things they want to sell with a personality, a lifestyle, a way of being in the world.
Why be stuck with one expensive car when you can enjoy all the fun and freedom of 2 fine Fords?
Brands had evolved from luxury to need and now to image.
The concept of the brand image, the personality of the product, was coined by a Viennese psychologist called M.S. Dichter. And he used various psychoanalytic techniques to uncover the more or less unconscious associations that consumers had with particular products.
And even the automobile, it was no longer marketed as a mode of transportation. Get rid of your horse and buggy and get a car, which is what the Model T was advertised as. It was, be free, be an American, hit the roads, smoking. It's killing you, maybe killing you, but man, you're a camel guy, and you're on a horseback. You know the Wild West.
The new era of big business offered countless goods with big personalities that were pushed onto consumers with the big sell.
Media and branding is the same thing. Mass production required mass marketing in order to have 3,000 miles of nation accept plain brown boxes as instead of goods from their local merchant. And mass media was required to spread that imagery, so that the Quaker would get to your town before the box of oats.
Saatchi and Saatchi, the great British advertising marketing firm, the owner of that firm, the president, told a story on himself about 15 years ago. It was an amazing story. He said, I use Head & Shoulders, and I love Head & Shoulders, and I've used it and used it and used it now for over 25 years. And I have to admit that 15 years ago, I went bald. But I still use it because Head & Shoulders is my kind of, and that, using something for which you have no need, but because it gives you a kind of identity.
We decided to pay a visit to Saatchi and Saatchi in New York and met with a couple of modern-day marketing executives to try and get the inside track on brands. I've been doing a lot of reading about what you guys do, which is presumably, what is it you do? Branding, advertising, marketing, PR. What is it exactly is branding in relation to all these other things we hear, like advertising and marketing and so on?
Well, the brand is what lives in the consumer's mind, right? Like we buy products, we buy goods, but the brand is the meaning, and it's the perception, and it's what people are buying into.
So when you buy a shoe,
yeah,
you're buying Nike.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, that means Nike means so much more than just the functional stuff the shoe's made out of, like there's an aspiration to it, there's an emotion to it. And what it really means is Nike can charge a premium what their shoes are.
Did Brent just say emotion talking about shoes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that connection, that relationship that you have. I mean, the brand, some people, I think most people are getting the idea that a brand is not the logo, it's not the swoosh on the Nike, but it's the summation of all the experiences that you have with it.
Does Nike has a soul? Does it have a character? What is it?
It's what you make it, because everybody's relationship to...
What you guys make it, or what we make it?
What the individual does.
But it's what you guys sell us, no?
Well,
you're the one who's selling us the brand.
It's how you adopt it and make it part of your life. What
I use it for running.
Great.
They're good for that.
But there's no emotional attachment with it.
Oh, yeah, sure it is. You want a good shoe that's going to fit you. You've tried on a bunch of them. And then you want the one that's going to be your, essentially the thing that's going to be your running partner.
Right. But this is what you guys do. You manufacture emotions by creating a brand.
Manufacture is an interesting word because I don't think you can make it up in terms of there needs to be an authentic, believable story there that we just simply are either amplifying or telling in a new way or a different way. When it becomes manufactured, it kind of becomes spin and it becomes, and consumers are too damn smart.
But that's what you guys are into, no?
Well, yeah, spin? Sure. Like we tell stories that make brands more interesting for people, more entertaining for people. And my view is that right now we are competing with culture, right? Because people have got no time. I don't know about you, I've got no time. And there's so much content out there, there's so much stuff that wants my time. So only the very best stuff I ever bother spending time with. And that's the same for most consumers out there, right?
I mean, is that why there's a story and emotion and character in a product? So that product has become a concept? Commodities have become concepts?
Well, the concepts, like I said, are experiences, and brands find ways to kind of connect in a way that's going to be able to be differentiated.
So is that how Starbucks, for example, works out? I remember, I don't know about you, I remember the first time I went to Starbucks.
Yeah.
I go in there and I say, could I have coffee?
Yeah.
And there was a line behind me. Everyone looked at me with disgust.
Right.
Speaking the wrong language.
Yeah. That's what people love about it, though. You go into a Starbucks, it's the drink that I order is going to be different from what you order, and different from what you order. Right. Everybody's got their own thing, and I think it's that sense of identity that the brand allows to happen.
Is it really about what it is or what it promises to be?
Well,
a
brand, yeah. No, a brand is absolutely a promise. And I think that, brands create expectations, and it's critical that you live up to that promise. I mean, nothing worse than a brand that promises something and then doesn't deliver. And today, today's consumers vote straight away.
Any brand, you can even think of that. Like whether it's a product, why is that product made? Is it made for me?
And when you go back and look at when these beautiful brands were started, they were started for a reason and with a purpose. And I think often brands forget about that, but brands that have a purpose in our lives and have a reason to exist and a real role that we care about, they're the brands that are winning, today.
Speaking of winning, Why is it America that has the biggest brands?
Invented it.
Invented it.
Invented it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you think of that. There's that wonderful Andy Warhol quote about how America invented the product, like Coca-Cola, where it doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are, you get the same product. You know, and it's like whether you're the president or whether you're Elizabeth Taylor, whether you're just me, you're going to get the same Coke as everybody else.
And you're going to eat the same tomato soup.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that you're right? Like there are these amazing American brands that are so incredibly democratic and for everyone, Coca-Cola, Walmart, whatever. And yet the country seems to have kind of lost its way a little bit when it comes to that, right? Like, but the brands are inherently kind of democratic.
The opposite side of that is that things like Starbucks, things like Nike, things like, I mean, even like, you know, Facebook or Google are all about something that is individual, you know, something that can, you know, you can make your own. That ties into, you know, that idea of that American sensibility of the individual and that rugged individualism and doing things on your own. You're able to kind of, you know, make this your own.
What's interesting in these brands, they're not American anymore. Right, Coke is not an American brand, it's a global brand. Nike's a global brand, and the fact they came from America is almost irrelevant now.
What about brand America? Can an entire country be branded?
America is freedom.
This is a country where anything is possible.
Regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or disability.
That is the true basis of American exceptionalism.
We have led by our example as a shining city on a hill.
That American dream.
The American dream.
That great American dream.
Do Americans really believe in America as the greatest show on earth? They certainly work very hard at selling themselves to themselves and everyone else.
I like to think that what we're doing with this campaign is we're helping rekindle the world's love affair with America.
Megan Kent, now CEO of Megan Kent Branding Group, led the launch of the Brand USA campaign at J. Walter Thompson in 2012.
We didn't realize it, but not everybody in the world is in love with America anymore, which was a little unsettling and a little surprising. Have we gotten somewhat more locked in as a country to our prejudices and our stereotyping of other people? I think we have. But at the same time, the idea that people feel when they come here is that this is a place where more is possible than any place else.
So is the Land of Dreams campaign proof that nations can be branded?
Well, over the last nearly 20 years, I've advised the governments of 53 countries on this kind of stuff.
Simon ANHOLT is a pioneer of nation branding and now believes that a campaign cannot brand a country.
Oh, I've had this conversation so many times over the years of governments who ring me up and they say, we have a crap image, can you fix it? And I always say the same thing. I say, are you perhaps a crap country?
Yet nations clearly have identities. And America is probably the best known brand in the world. So where does Brand America come from? And just how old is it?
One of the great books of the 18th century was a French book called by Crèvecoeur, a French writer, called The New American Man. So even in the 18th century, there was the notion not just that there was a new continent out there and a new country, but there was a new kind of man, a new human being created in America, unique, different, simple, freed from the burdens of history and prejudice.
The United States of America is a deliberate construct. It was a country that was packaged and sold to the world as a deliberately attractive proposition because it was a country that needed to attract investment, it needed to attract immigrants more than anything else. How the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were effectively the brand strategy of this new product or service that was launched upon the world. And in a sense, this is where the whole concept of nation as brand has originated from.
Did America start selling Brand America, the American dream, and America's ideologies right away?
If it's true that America's unique mission as an exceptionalist nation was kind of innocent and isolationist for the first century or more of our history, the whole marketing and branding thing actually didn't start till the beginning of the 20th century.
Brand America was paid for by the Rockefellers and the Ford Foundation and the CIA in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they thought about how are we going to create an international alternative to both the fascism that we just saw in Nazi Germany that was marketed brilliantly and the coming communist revolution from Russia westward.
Americans seem to have a sincere and deep belief that the more the world is like themselves, the safer, wealthier, and more secure Americans will be. Maybe, maybe not. They also believe that the safer, wealthier, and happier everyone will be. Does the rest of the world buy it?
Everybody loves and admires America because it was designed to be loved and admired.
What's interesting is for Brand USA, it almost succeeds in spite of what the government does. So often it's, whether it's government shutdowns, whether it's budget ceiling negotiations, whether it's foreign policy missteps, it's really the rest of America that picks up the slack from government and really powers Brand America. And whether that's Silicon Valley to Harvard or Hollywood to Times Square. I don't think there's any other country that really has an impact on the day-to-day lives of global citizens. From the phone in your pocket to the TV show you watch. Even if that show has been dubbed into your native language, America is just kind of omnipresent.
We decided we should sit down and talk to people who are actually out there in the business of spreading the American brand. So what is it then for the both of you? What is Brand America then? What is it that you represent around the world?
Brand America. This is a big, complicated, wonderful, sometimes awful place, the United States of America. I love it, and I love what it stands for. But I'm first to admit it has many flaws. One of the things that VOA does is to report honestly about the United States. We don't shirk from stories that may not make the United States look wonderful. Well, we're broadcasting internationally.
I mean, you are less independent than PBS is.
We're part of the U.S. government.
Exactly.
I'm a federal official.
Exactly.
So in that sense, yes, you're right. I work directly for the United States government.
Our primary concern are all about, are we getting it right and improving the lives of the people in the developing countries that we're serving? That's what development assistance is about.
So you want to improve their physical life. He wants to improve their mental mindset, I guess, or something.
I would say development has moved very far away from giving the physical stuff. Although if you ask me what the brand of America is in development, I would certainly say we're seen as, since we're in the spirit of Christmas, oftentimes like a Santa Claus that has a bundle of gifts. We're going to give stuff. We're also seen, I think, as we're going to fix stuff. We're a very, that American can-do spirit is not suppressed in development. That is both, I think our brand is both a strength and a weakness, because the very can-do, we can fix it, we know the answer, gets us into trouble and doesn't always allow us to do the best job.
It's actually messianic, no?
I wouldn't say it's messianic, but I would say that it's driven by a real passion to do good. And I think that's really a part of the American spirit. And I think it sometimes gets misunderstood. I think it gets lost in the mix.
When you look at the global American foreign policy, are you the firefighters? The CIA and the Pentagon inflame the world, and you go out there and try to put off the fires. Make people around the world love America, even when the Pentagon and the CIA don't exactly do a great job.
You know something? I don't think that people's attitudes to America around the world are as much shaped by what we are and what we do as they are about what those people are and what they do. But I think today, the most pro-American country on earth might well be Iran. And it's not because of anything that America's done. But again, it is because the people in Iran do not like their own government very much.
So resolve this paradox for me. KRISTI's organization, or USAID in general, helps countries like Jordan, like Egypt, like Turkey, and others, right? How come, according to Pew, America's ratings is the lowest in the world in the countries you help most?
Frankly, being the biggest power on earth means that people shape their perceptions of reality against, vis-a-vis, the United States very often.
So what you're saying...
The other thing that happens is...
So if you're popular in Iran, why aren't you popular in Egypt? That's the question. They're both Middle Eastern countries. You help one of them, and you have lower ratings there. So it must be about something that you do.
So I'm just trying to say to you, I don't think it is. I think it's about attitudes inside those countries that are often shaped by other forces. There are governments that spend a lot of time and effort trying to make their population anti-American and use that as a unifying element to help keep their governments in power.
Do we agree that, propaganda aside and cliches and slogans aside, that countries, especially countries, superpowers, serious countries like the United States, have interests, first and foremost?
Absolutely.
And whether it's USAID or whether it's Voice of America, it's meant to advance certain interests. I mean, this is clear.
And no apologies for it.
I mean, I have sympathy for you. I mean, you really have to make America look good in places where America behaved badly.
You know, we're not in the business of trying to make America look wonderful or do a propaganda snow job for the United States. We're in the business of providing reliable news and information to audiences that don't have enough of it, in our view, and yes, presenting our own country, explaining it to people.
I think seeing development on the ground in Africa, competing for the heart and mind and soul of the African farmer, this is, I've seen an evolution. It's less about power. It's really more, the end game is about empowerment. And I think that's what the agenda of development should be. I think it should be the agenda of Voice of America, and we should move a little bit away from the power, control, dictate to empowering.
David, KRISTI, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Do we face a future in which every human on the planet will have a Starbucks and a drive-through McDonald's, and every child will have visited Mickey Mouse at their local Disney World? Will the enemies of the United States still want to go to Stanford and MIT? Or will every nation search for its own Vladimir Putin, and every city seek to be Shanghai? We'll find out after the break. American brands in every nook and cranny of the world. Is that just business? Brand America, with all its flag waving and proselytizing, is that just wind and noise? Or does it translate into actual power, even soft power?
When Obama came in, his advisors argued that he should try to rely as much on soft power as on hard power. The power of seduction, the power of attraction, cultural attraction.
Well, soft power is a phrase which in its way is just as confusing and as mobile and unsafe as brand. But the fact of the matter is that the main reason why America holds so much sway globally is because people like it, and that's worked extraordinarily well, and that heralds a new age, an age of soft power.
We decided to go to the source, Joseph Nye, at another of America's elite brands, Harvard University.
I don't think anybody had written it or said it before I did in around 1990, but the underlying concept is as old as ancient Chinese philosophy. I mean, if you read your Lao Tzu or Confucius, you will see the idea that you can get what you want through attraction and persuasion. So that's not new, but calling it soft power and showing how it relates to other types of power, such as economic and military power, I think I was the first to do that.
No one has been more critical of Nye's work than leading human rights advocate Richard Falk.
He, I think, was trying to reformulate for the political elite a more sensible way of pursuing American foreign policy goals in the world. My problem with it is that he's an advocate of American hegemony, essentially, seeing it as a benevolent historical force.
No, I think he might want to read a little more carefully. I mean, for one thing, I point out that the concept of soft power has nothing to do with America. As applied to the United States in the period since 1945, I avoid the word hegemony.
But there is this almost mystical feeling that the two are connected, that America wouldn't be potent without this military dominance, and that the military dominance is what enjoys agency in history, that history is made by the winners in wars. And I think that view allows the cultural and these other dimensions of the brand America to be so charismatic for the rest of the world.
Hard power and soft power can complement each other. It's that combination, the ability to combine the two, that I call smart power.
He's trying to say we can use our hard power more effectively if we make sufficiently imaginative use of our soft power.
And that's the whole idea, which is attraction. And the interesting thing about soft power is, unlike hard power, it depends on what's in the mind of the perceiver or the recipient. So if I pull out a gun and I want to take your wallet and I shoot you, it doesn't matter what you think. I shoot you, I take the wallet. That's hard power. If I want you to give me your money because you think that I'm a guru who will save the world, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time persuading you, and it all depends on what's in your mind, whether you hand over your money to me.
American hard power adventures have made their nation many enemies.
باراك اوباما فيفا للدالي لاما فيفا للCIA والCIN صنع الدراما فيفا للاستقامة فيفا كالي هوليوود.
But some things escape anti-American sentiment.
I've had this experience myself when I've spoken to angry young Muslims about their views of America, and when the questions are of a political nature, they express all the anger and the distaste that you would expect them to. But then when the interview's over and you ask them about their own personal aspirations, they will happily trot out the story that they would like to get an American work permit and go and study at MIT and become a billionaire on Wall Street.
It's the cultural imperialism of American brands that breeds a lot of American hatred. You know, it's the fact that, you know, you hate the things that you love, especially if you know that it's a sick love, right? So if you see the McDonald's arches and you get that longing for salt on your tongue, are you gonna hate those arches more if you walk away, or if you go in and actually buy the burger and poison yourself with that crap? You know, you're gonna hate it more if you ate the burger, if you drank the Coke.
Hail, hail, everything's for sale. It's the soft machine.
If even those at the wrong end of U.S. power are caught between love and hate by brand America, is there any nation, any other model that can possibly compete?
The great temptation of the 21st century, of course, is to do it undemocratically.
The China dream is clearly inspired by American dream, and because it's if it's from traditional China, there's no China dream, right? But it's uniquely Chinese.
That kind of Chinese model, which is not the Chinese communist, but more of the kind of Confucian-Leninism that is the actual way that China is governed, with a strong state where the social contract is maybe you don't have as much individual freedoms, but you have security and you have a growing economy. I think that does compete with the American model.
It took the United States economy very, very long period to really shift from a volume-based economy to innovation-based economy.
I don't think they will grow through branding the way that America did. I think that they'll grow through pricing and attributes. You know, if they can say, our phone can do everything the iPhone can do, but it's $6. You don't want to know how it's made. And people buy that, then that's it.
They are opening their door and they're expanding their market, and because of its market, they actually have much more power toward the Western the business world, and the capitalism actually has to pay attention to the communist leadership.
Whereas China's brand is inseparable from the Communist Party, some countries are sold in the image of their leader. None more so than Russia.
Vladimir Putin!
Putin's government has made real efforts to export it. Russia's soft power exports are, on the one hand, a strong criticism and consistent criticism of the United States, which is essentially saying not be like Russia, but don't quite rush to be like the United States. And then the second is based on, and people here often forget this, how widespread the places in the world where Russian is either a first or second language, a huge swath of the planet. And in those places, Russia does have soft power of a sort. So Russia has its own kind of soft power. It's not as dramatic, so it's much more regionally specific, and it's not quite based on promoting a model. I don't get a sense that outside of Russia, there's a great desire to have a system like that, one that Russia has, from ordinary people. Even people who can be very critical of the United States.
But are competing nations with competing models just a sideshow to the real chase for power?
The most obvious dominant force of the 21st century, of course, is not political nations at all. It's corporations, multinational corporations. They are cross-border. Their markets are all over the place. There's one fundamental problem. They're private, not public.
If a person now believes in Apple, believes in Lego, believes in Nike with the fervor that they believed in Allah or Jesus or Moses, now you're in trouble.
Soft power, how does it work in the real world? Is it merely a velvet glove hiding the iron fist? I expect that when we speak to Chris Hedges, author of Empire of Illusions, and Judith McHale, former Assistant Secretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, we'll get radically different views. So, Judith, Chris, welcome to Empire. We're going to start with you, Chris. So, soft power, what does that really mean to you in terms of American soft power around the world?
Power has many dimensions. Economic sanctions is a form of soft power in a sense that the violence is not direct. There was certainly violence when we carried out sanctions against Iraq, in particular in terms of medicine, in terms of children and the suffering. Soft power can be implemented through the twisting and deformation of legislation to essentially further the interests of the United States, or, as most is often the case, the interests of corporations that seek to exploit natural resources in particular places. So it's one of the many ways by which empire can affect the outcome to further its interests. But I wouldn't separate it from what we call hard power or violence. I would say it's all part of the same process.
This doesn't sound very good, does it?
It's a different definition of soft power than I've heard. I mean, I've heard things like that as well, but I think it goes beyond that. It's in today's interconnected world, it's all the ways in which we reach out and connect with people. It is, you mentioned corporations, it is certainly corporations going out and how they exercise their power, their influence within markets. It's cultural exchanges. We've all heard about the importance or the impact of movies and television and how that affects us. Educational exchanges. There are many, many ways that they do it, and governments have got to find ways of reaching out deep into society so that they can connect with people and find new ways of collaborating, cooperating, or I guess you're using the word sort of twisting their arms, but I think the whole basis of collaboration and communication very broadly and deeply into societies in every way that you can is sort of an essential part of soft power.
How much is that exchange? How much is that domination? I mean, at the end of the day, in most of these countries that America is exercising soft power, those countries are not exactly exercising soft power in America. It's not really a balanced exchange.
Clearly, we're a very strong and powerful presence when we go into countries and sort of in the ways that we do. But the world is changing, and so you're seeing more voices rising in countries, and I think a lot of that is because of technology. People have the ability to reach out and deeply, not just speaking at people, but speaking with them, listening to them, learning from them wherever you can.
Are these complementary to one another,
well, yeah, they
soft
work,
and hard power?
Sure. I mean, they work together. The U.S. has a very clear agenda in countries that it seeks to dominate or control, and it will use all mechanisms available to carry out that domination.
Do you agree?
I probably would take issue of our sort of march around the world that we're trying to dominate and control countries. I didn't see it like that, and I felt that, again, from my perspective, we're in this interconnected world. We all depend on each other to a far greater degree than we ever did before, and there are many, many voices and governments that are all sort of playing in the same field, trying, again, to sort of find ways of protecting their agenda, most assuredly, but at the same time, how do we sort of work at this together, work at solutions, and how do we
But do you think soft power complements hard power or has been trying to replace hard power?
I don't think soft power will replace hard power. I think inevitably the two will go together. But I believed quite strongly, and one of the reasons why I took the position I did was that we had to, our government, every government has got to find ways of communicating much more broadly and deeply into societies than we ever did before. And if we don't, then it's going to be very difficult for us to move any agenda forward.
What is it about America that wants attention, wants love, wants admiration? Why?
I didn't feel like I was leading a team of people that were going out trying to get people to love us.
But isn't that your motto, basically, winning hearts and minds?
Well, I didn't feel like that was my mission, to go out. It was basically to go out and to really sort of, if you will, find new ways of communicating with people, to sort of put out who we are, to make it very clear to people who we were, what we stood for, and what our position was on a broader range of issues. But I think today, in today's world, to sort of go out and sort of position it as we're trying to capture hearts and minds.
It certainly didn't work.
It's not going to work. You lack authenticity when you do that, and people can see that very quickly.
Is it a question of communication? I mean, is America seen in certain parts of the world negatively because they understand or because they misunderstand America?
It's a question of how we communicate, and we communicate increasingly to the rest of the world, and this is certainly true in the Middle East, through violence. That's the primary language we speak to Pakistanis, Iraqis, Afghanis, Yemenis, Somalis, and others. And certainly let's not forget the Palestinians through our surrogate Israel. And that's not an image problem. That is an attempt to recreate the Middle East in our image through force, which has been a disaster. And all the kind of propaganda campaigns and branding and image campaigns are kind of useless.
So no public diplomat is going to be able to neutralize that? Is that what you're saying?
No, because it's so disconnected from our primary form of communication and what we're doing. And Judith speaks about, communicating. Well, we never asked Iraqis what they wanted. We never asked Afghanis what they wanted. We have remained utterly tone deaf. We sought elites that were willing to do our bidding, but those elites, whether it's Maliki or Karzai, have become utterly discredited with their own population because they were puppets and essentially masks for U.S. imperialism. Because this is the primary form of communication, by the time we arrive, the language by which we would like to speak to people is rendered mute, because we are speaking a language, almost exclusively a language of force, and not only force, but even terror and torture.
Presumably, in some very basic definition of soft power, is that America would lead by the power of its example rather than the example of its power. And if that is the case, then, from Abu Ghraib to the torture report and from Guantanamo to the inequality report in the United States, what example is the United States?
Well, I agree with you. You wish that we would lead, you wish that were the case, but we live in a very imperfect world. And it's not as if, it sounds as if we are the worst, the only one in the world going out doing this. We are the bad guys, the rest of the world is good, and it's simply not like that.
Other superpowers don't claim to be the exceptional nation, the benevolent nation, the indispensable nation.
And I think when we look at ourselves like that, do we claim to that or do we aspire to be that? And I would say that those are our aspirational goals, that we aspire to be there. Do we make mistakes? Do we fall off the path? Absolutely. Are there moments in time where our foreign policy or economic policy conflicts with our fundamental values? Unfortunately, that's the case. We're not unique in that. But I believe at the end of the day, we are constantly striving to achieve those goals. But it's a very difficult needle to thread.
There might be a lot of problems which we're discussing about America. But brand America is still more powerful, more influential, more attractive than everyone else, because guess what,
I think if you look on a global basis, people look and they go, there is still the promise of America, the ability to come here, the ability to participate and to aspire for a better life and to have your dreams, to set goals for yourself and be able to achieve it. And I think that is why it continues to be a very compelling message and an opportunity that people sort of look at that and aspire to be like that. Again, with admitting fully that we are not, in any way perfect.
But statistically, we know that's a myth. This ability to come to America and rise and get a middle class.
Well, many people do. But I would agree, not everyone does. We constantly come back to what are our
Interestingly, most
foundational
Americans
goals.
now think that the American dream is not much of a reality.
Well, because it isn't.
The point I was trying to make was not that we are perfect. I'm not saying that. Not that everyone who comes to this country can achieve the American dream, whatever that might be in the 21st century. But that when you look around the world and you look at other countries, this is still a very attractive option, if you will, warts and all.
So explain to me, why despite the myth, why despite the erosion in the economic well-being and the failure on the military front, the brand called Brand America remains so triumphant?
Because we're very good through mass media and through entertainment systems in perpetuating that brand. People's perceptions, courtesy of the mass media, bear very little relationship to the reality. And immigrants who now come, and we have reconfigured the American economy into an oligarchic form of neo-feudalism. Unlike anything we have seen since the age of the robber barons, we have destroyed our working class, and we are in the process of destroying our middle class. And yet that myth, whether it's disseminated through television programs or Hollywood or public diplomacy, continues to be perpetuated, but I think it no longer bears any relation to the reality. But all sorts of people from Carl Polanyi and other economists have pointed out that you don't want to let unregulated, unfettered, let's call them corporate forces, determine how you structure your society. Because at that point, it becomes completely predatory. And that's what's happened. Predatory internally and predatory internationally.
We do need the rule of law and citizenship.
Well, I think it's complicated, and I don't see the world quite so black and white in that regard. Are there huge challenges right now? Yes. Do I believe special interests have a sort of a very loud voice in the process? Yes. But at the end of the day, I'm probably going to choose to be more optimistic and say we are confronting these issues. We will find a path forward. We as citizens have an obligation to sort of come together and to sort of find a way forward and a change and a challenge that. Is it complicated? Yes. Is it going to be very difficult? Absolutely. Is there too much money in the process? Unquestionably.
And you think Brand America will continue to prevail?
I think it will continue to prevail because I come back to what we stand for, what we aspire to be, and all the things that we are looking to do and our ability to continually, hopefully, move in that direction. Do we go up and down? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I do believe in the fundamental principles of this country and what we aspire to be. And I hope that we will continue to move in that direction.
She's still hopeful. I don't think you convinced her, Chris.
That's all right.
I'm an optimist.
On this point of disagreement. Thank you. So, Merry Christmas from America, New York, and from Empire. Just let us all remember that the Santa you know so well and your children probably love is the product of a brand. And what a brand. Coca-Cola. They redesigned him and repackaged him and put him in Coke's colors, red and white. Santa Claus, Coca-Cola, the USA, they're all practically synonymous. So when you buy into Brand America, it's Christmas all year round.